Hey, welcome to another episode of Backwoods Brothers. My name is Joel. I'm with my man
Tony.
And we have a very special guest today. We have Tim LeMaster, right?
Yes, Tim
LeMaster.
LeMaster.
I
yes.
love the last name. You know that.
Well,
LeMaster.
kind of a funny thing about it, you think, and as a kid growing up, it was always like, oh, the master, and kids always make fun and the master. But when I looked it up, it actually is kind of like maitre d', how that's the servant, and it seems it actually means the servant as opposed to, the person in charge.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me.
But you strike me as a person that's actually in charge.
Just
your whole demeanor says that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it'd be important. He's running for House District 43 for the state of Oregon.
Yep. So, Tim LeMaster. I'm running for state representative, House District 43, which is inner Northeast Portland. And it's the corner, inner Northeast Portland. I-80, I-5, I-84, right tight in that corner. Very small, tight district. It's interesting because I've met you guys and I've been around, especially going to Clackamas and meet folks that are doing their politics there. And I feel for y'all, it's strung out everywhere. I can literally walk the perimeter of my district in one day if I want to. Northeast Portland, House District 43. And just to do the housekeeping, my website is bringbackportland.com. And Bring Back Portland, I got kind of a low bar for that. Bring Back Portland, where when you walk downtown, you're not looking where you step because there's human waste in the road. Where you're not worried about. Actually, I've seen lately people reporting more so now peeping toms and people going into their backyards, and you start your car and it makes all this noise because somebody stole your catalytic converter in the middle of the night. The assaults and it'd be nice not to have record homicide. That would be a nice step back. So hoping to be part of the chain between the federal, state, and local level to help try to facilitate getting things balanced and trying to help the community that I'm in there in Portland.
Well, can I just start right into it and say, how did we get here? How did we get here where we're talking about record this and record that? What is in your opinion?
Well, I mean, it's hard to get on the other side of, Oregon, and I didn't realize this. So I retired out of the Marine Corps 9 years ago.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Retired out of the Marine Corps. I enlisted as a private, worked my way up, retired as a Marine Corps major, and moved here to Portland. I didn't understand. I've never lived local because my military life, I constantly moved, rarely ever in a place more than 2 years. So local politics wasn't a thing for me. Come here, enjoyed it very much. I love the weird. I love the bohemian and just kind of eccentric way that things are. But now the problems we have. I think a few things. It became very attractive, and I see this centralized control of the government, wanting to plan and control everything. And I think there's a whole lot with that skewed it out. And of course, Portland, a lot of the activism and dynamics that go there certainly play, and you get these clashes that come into place. And literally 2 years ago, that was a big one. I mean, the defund the police. And I know people say, well, we didn't mean take the money away, defund them. We mean move it to other places. But that's not what was said. And the neighbors I've been talking to, and we're talking longtime local residents that saw the ugly of Portland in the 70s and 80s and lived through a lot of bad things. That's something that even their own rights, this was so bad, the defund police. I mean, pick a better slogan, police smarter or something. But that certainly had a huge factor in the violence situation, the lack of enforcement we got going on. We've got a serious police shortage going on in our area, and even just the lack of enforcement of stuff. And we got the DA, even not Republicans, are upset about this stuff happening and enforcement not taking place.
Some would say that was the plan all along. Is the point of chaos? Would you agree that there's some sort of sense of chaos? Because when you have chaos, breeds fear breeds control.
No disputing that happens, but whether it's sinister plot or whatever, however people want to do it, label it in that way. I'm honestly not as concerned about that aspect. It's what you can say is there's definitely, when Oregon has been dominated head to toe, especially down to Portland level, by Democrat policies for decades. Because really the Republicans have had almost no say, and in the last 4 years they've had literally no say with the supermajority. So it's hard to dispute that when you've got literally a generation's worth of one party domination from state to city, county, and everything in between.
It's not even just state to city; it's federal government down. I mean, you want to see what a Democrat-run federal and then the Democrat-run state down to city and everything, top to bottom, all the way top to bottom. You're getting it right here in Portland. That's a great example of what a full Democrat run. Well, there's no balance.
And you've got other places. The contrast is there. Chicago, New York. They've had violence breaking out and a lot of problems, and it's very similar stuff. Lack of prosecutions. Mm-hmm. There is actual lawlessness taking place. I've been talking to a lot of people. I talked to a restaurant owner. Literally, somebody walks right in and stole the register right off his counter. He calls the police, and there is not even they showed up, at the end of the day or nothing. There is no response, and that's where we're at. And I get it. The police are so shorthanded. Part of what's contributed to it, it's interesting. It's not just simply. I've talked with people the defund police aspect, and I think, and there's merit to them saying, well, some of the reallocating funds in Portland was on track before the defund movement. One of the things I learned happened was there was a huge surge of hiring cops and firefighters. I actually spoke to a retired fireman that filled me in on this. There's this big bubble that they hired them all right around early 80s or so. Well, they're all at retirement age. They have the option. So suddenly, kind of like the boomers moving up through, and here they are, things like defund police and the anger and hostilities from 2 years ago hits, and they're just like, you know what, I got my overtime, we're on the other side of this, I'm done. And that's one of the things when it comes to this policing, so is that piece. So you've got this huge exodus of retirement eligible people that steps out. And so when I'm talking to people, what I'm bringing up as well is you've got that social contract. You've got that social contract between police and people, and there's discussion about it being broken and police abuses and things like that. But something that's not talked about, and I speak to this looking at my military experience, you have the police between their political leaders. That's been broken. And that to me is the scarier thing that needs fixed and is going to be a lot tougher to fix. And nobody's talking about that piece. Who wants to come in and be a cop? Because now they're desperately trying to hire people. Who wants to come in and be a cop when none of your governor, when your governor doesn't support you, mm-hmm. when your mayor doesn't support you, when you don't have city council people being adults in the room 2 years ago and say, look, we get that there's issues with police, but defund, abolish, all of that is not,
they're not worried
the answer.
About pleasing the voters. Real quick, just before we get Wolfgang, good to see you out there. Linda, good to see you. James, we're doing great. Kelly, good to see you. And we are talking to Tim LeMaster. So, for House District 43.
Yep, Inner Northeast Portland. So that's a big issue that I see with this that nobody's talking about. And then part of it as well, do you really want the people that are coming in for money to be your police now? Because that's what we are. They have to look at how much money. And it's kind of ironic that the defund police movement created some of the highest payroll in overtime. That's one that cracked me up. Like, what if there's a sinister plot on part of the police union to get this whipped up? And now all these cops got record overtime, massive payout from, all this overtime from doing the protests and all that. And I do kind of wonder, well, how does that affect their high 3 at retirement? So at the end of all these folks retire and they freaking blow through the roof with overtime and all that. That's one I'm really kind of curious about. I haven't heard anybody speak to. It might be a non-issue, but that would be curious as well. But kind of ironic that the defund police resulted in some of the largest paychecks in Portland police history.
Interesting.
I will have to say, I know a couple of police officers who would actually say to you that we don't need the overtime. We are overtaxed already.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no doubt.
Overtaxed already. Yeah, the benefits probably are there, but they're deferred.
Oh yeah, certainly.
With body pain, with being exhausted, with being beat down.
Yeah, and no doubt. I mean, undoubtedly they're getting, especially during then, even more so now. I mean, stretched out, thinned out. It's pretty bad when it's big news in Portland. I think it was recently we had 20 police that got hired on, and that was big news. You know, and it's funny because I mean that's an important. I mean that's a big number, which kind of tells you how much of a problem this
There's
is.
a second half issue here, though. But like for example, getting them trained just as it is, they had
Sure.
to add two more classes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's they do it every 3 years, and they do the cycles or something.
Right.
They'd had two more classes, which I mean, it seemed like a lot, but it is considering the time it takes to get on there, and that they're fitting the more classes in the same amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's because they're trying to train them to refill them fast enough, but at the same time they can't get them in there. So a new officer may get hired, but it may take them 3 months before they even get to go to the academy.
Yeah, you've always got that delay in getting them in there, and then they got to get through it. It's not a guarantee that they're going to pass, you know. So whatever is normal for attrition, etc. But yeah, that is certainly a major issue with the Portland piece. Is just
the big thing
you
to
know,
think about
police.
is for an officer to go, and we know this because we're going through it in the city of Estacada now. From a new hire point of an officer to when they're solo on the street and not happen to be with an FTO, it's about 18 months. That's an 18-month period to get a new officer in to replace it.
Okay.
So that 2 years that they were going through the defund and everybody's like, I don't want to be a cop.
Oh, I know. Yeah, that makes sense.
You had that 2 year period in there, and then you got 2 more years just before you're going to see that swing if they're just starting to hire now.
Yeah.
So
one of the things, and I've asked locals, and I've knocked on a whole lot of doors now and talking to a lot of people, and that's been amazing. I mean, just getting to know your neighbors.
Oh yeah.
You know, we're not, and especially with us having been clamped down and living through, you know, telephone screens and laptops for 2 years, you know, and now we're kind of in that malaise of coming out and so on. But it's been wonderful talking to people. One of the questions I've asked, I haven't had a really solid answer. To me, this would be the best thing to fix it, is that especially longtime locals in the area become police, you know, and that's something, you know, that I've asked the question, haven't gotten a real solid answer. Kind of the main thing that gets floated is primarily just, you know, especially the black community not trusting the cops. But, you know, to me, there's a part I'd like to have more of a discussion with some of the leaders in the area that I've talked to and get into that more of, you know, just that basic fact that, like it or not, but if you become the police now, you can help flesh that out.
I actually
and deal
love
with it.
that idea because that brings like a small town feel to a big town.
Yeah,
city.
I mean,
That's a
when
great
it's
idea.
it's how much it would be so much, and that would help with the government side, because if it's coming, you know, that trust between police and government, because as long as the police have the trust of the people, well, if the politicians are basically being bastards about it, if the people are still supporting the police, you know, they can call it out. One of the things that's a real problem too, and I never understood this, and there may be more involved than I realize, but it shocks me when I say this to just, you know, kind of regular Portland people that I'm talking to. I mean, I was thinking this at the time. Why in the hell didn't the mayor just fire the police chief?
Well,
And the mayor's the commissioner of the police, or that higher level. In the Marine Corps, when I joined in, we had issues with hazing. It was a big deal. National news, the whole pinning and all this stuff. And there's those cycles in the military where big issues raise up, and you go after the leadership and you hold them accountable and hammer down. And the local leadership doesn't, for whatever reason, doesn't have the courage to do it. And if the bureaucracy is a problem, because I know the police unions are known for the big power and influence, but that's when, you know, the mayor and the leadership at the various levels use that bully pulpit and say, look, we got to change these rules. You want this corruption out of here. We know there's bad apples or whatever's going on. We need it. You're the ability to empower us. We need to change these rules and be able to clean house. Because it's a discourtesy to the good cops that are there too. You know,
exactly.
that's taking care of them, you know, and that matters. And you build that reputation, you build that brand and trust, etc. But whoever's in charge has to have the backbone to hold people accountable. And it stuns me how often with some of these issues I'm talking to people, and the idea of you fire somebody, like somehow it's beyond comprehension. That's a really strange thing I've come
You got
across.
the union portion too. It's so hard to fire anybody in the government side. I mean,
Sure.
It's
But again, that's the leadership piece. Where are they at calling this out? You know, if anybody in a position of authority, whether it's a representative, especially the executives, governor, mayor, and so on, you know, to me, that's all part of what you need to be able to do and call out. Look, I've got a bureaucracy in front of me. It needs to be changed. And if the powers that be, the entrenched people are making it difficult, you turn to the people and you point at it and say, boom, 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 boom. This needs to change. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Just this whole government thing. And I know military, I mean, DOD government, we've got those entrenched people that are there for 50 years and never making anything better. Deep state, it sounds crazy, but that's a reality.
Exactly.
They know the elected people are going to move on. So they just bide their time. Okay, Mr. Representative Tim, you're going to be gone in 2 years. So, good to go.
Yeah, and unfortunately, but in 2 years I think term should be a little longer, 2 years. I know you had some specific questions for him, but before we get to those, we need to go to our sponsor. Whitney Signs is a great local sign maker, makes signs like this, and right now they are making signs everywhere across for the elections. So if you have a sign, if you're getting elected, or if you have a sign, if you need something local, go ahead, please take a look at Whitney Signs.
A lot of it. Hi, we are back with Commissioner, hopefully soon. Representative, I should say,
yes,
Tim.
sir.
And so that commercial that you just saw, by the way, guys, that we're in the process of getting that all worked out, but you're going to see Slappy Dwarfs soon. It's a new video game put out by yours truly. I'm so excited about that. But don't forget about Sean Drink Wine and Whitney Signs. Amazing, amazing company. Brother Joel, you took it away. You already said it. They don't need any more introduction besides they're the best. They're the best. So it's good to have you back.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. For me, a big thing I need is just try to get out there and get exposure. I'm not some guy that had this network of organizations or anything like some of the folks that are running, and even my opponent. She was responsible, involved with the nonprofits in the area and such. I'm sure that was a core of what helped set it up. And for me, just trying to get in front of people, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to put material together to share, and hopefully it reaches an audience you're not used to, because that liberal inner Northeast Portland, a lot of people are not happy, and one of the things I have to get across. I'm not some far right. I'm a very libertarian minded guy. I actually registered as a libertarian when I came to Oregon 9 years ago. I retired out of the Marine Corps, came here, settled here. The people were wonderful, just the eccentricities and bohemian weirdness and all that. I love it. And yeah, registered libertarian, but they had all these weird dramas going on. And I actually shifted over to Democrat and voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries. And because I wanted the real discussion. To me, Bernie really, especially at that time, embodied the purity of Democrat views. Especially all of a sudden, so Democrat socialist, that became a buzzword when, literally in the beginning, everybody disavowed that, but Bernie said it, boom, we're on. And so I really wanted that on stage debate, Bernie and, whoever on the hard traditional right, and then that got all blown to hell with, Trump and Hillary, and it was like, holy smokes. Okay. But I'm all about the ideas and the balance and coming together and having those discussions and really rolling it around, what people think and believe, and put things to the test.
You said something, I'm very interested in a person's personality. And you said something about you called it eccentricness of Portland.
Sure.
But it was also a celebration of individualism. And
yeah. I
see, and if you had a quarter for every person that asked this question, you'd probably be a rich man. But explain to us this awesome kilt.
So actually, it was just, I came to Portland, and folks I've been around were kilt people and enjoyed that idea. And part of it, my military life, the rules and dress codes and shorts and button-up shirts, and become an officer, and it becomes even more so. But I just like the kilts, and these are actually 511 Tactical. They did a parody for April Fools many years ago, around the time I first got here. and people went crazy for it, and they didn't actually sell them. So the following year, they put out a limited run, and 511 Tactical now.
Wow.
They do a small run around New Year's and such, and I've got a handful of kilts, and I enjoy it. It also helps kind of break the ice and just
have a conversation.
I say just kind of like disarm, because you walk up like that and like, oh, I don't talk about Republican whatever, because I'm really not. Even the whole party thing, to me, there's just a bunch of garbage in it all. There's a whole lot. Like actually, and I hope to get in a conversation with some folks, maybe with us some other time. But one of the things that strikes me is, to me, by and large, if Republicans actually, carried themselves with the values they expound as far as liberty, freedom, individual, rights, and so on. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between a Republican and a libertarian then, as far as those views? I know there's a reality in how it plays out, but really, going into that piece of a conversation, I've got some ideas on it, and it always kind of comes down to one thing in particular.
I've always said that, I'm registered Republican, and I lie along with the Republican values, but I always go with conservative. I'm a conservative person.
Sure.
And so there are some things out there. There are some Republican candidates I don't agree with. There are some Republican actions and things they stood behind I don't agree with. For the most part, though, they tend to side more with what I agree with on the conservative side. And that's why I'm a Republican. But I say I am an actual conservative. That's my values, and that's what I follow. And wherever that takes me, that's where it takes me.
The conservative values thing, and this is like a piece that I hope to kind of bridge the gap and things like connect with left and right. So like a couple weeks ago, I sat through. There's a group that puts together some kind of constitutional classes and the founding of the Constitution and such, and went to it, and they're talking about founding fathers and some really good detail about that, and it's great. And I think you may still know some of the groups, some of the groups in Clackamas that get together, very staunch, hard conservative, and loving Trump and the whole thing. It ends. One of the guys looks at me and is like, "Well, hey Tim, what do you think?" All right. And to me, one of the things, and I wish Republicans were challenged on this when they start talking constitutional and individual rights. You sit in this room full of conservatives and you get done. It's like, yeah, but then the real challenge is, what about the stuff you don't agree with? Morality and so on. And I put out there as an example, the gay marriage discussion. And the room got kind of quiet. Well, gay marriage. And to me, especially back when it was all bubbling up, what really struck me is, why in the hell is government even involved in marriage in the first place? When the hell did the government, do you think George Washington went to the county office to get permission and a license to marry Martha? When did that first come around? But when you look into it, and this was like a 30-second and boom, a Wikipedia kind of thing, but it makes a lot of sense. It was freaking Jim Crow stuff. The idea of that of marriage licenses seems to be rooted in keeping blacks and whites from marrying each other in the South, and it just kind of spread or whatever. There is merit, because if there's a divorce, you got legalities with custody of children, property, things like that. So there's a piece where government has a role.
You're missing the biggest piece of it, though. Tax. A lot of those laws, including slavery, it wasn't necessarily about the slavery piece itself. It was about money behind it. Slavery was one of the biggest trades at the time. It was money. That's what actually made slavery what it was. It wasn't,
sure.
I don't like this person. I want to make them
right. But I don't think the marriage laws were there in the slavery time. It was more so Jim Crow slaves.
Yeah, I'm saying
kind of thing.
But
there's certainly
it expounded from the same thing. It's all about money based. I went back to slavery just because that's something that has been such a big talk about things.
Sure.
And slavery is something that was about money, and people get so focused on it was just a discriminatory. I don't like black people, and that's why they enslaved. No, it was money things. It's just like most things in the world. There's usually a money basis behind it for a lot of the choices and the actions you have made on it. And so, while I'm not saying that the whole choice was specifically on that, but if you notice, how many financial things are attached around in a marriage license? You got taxes, you got fees.
Oh yeah, and that's what I talk about. Like, and so getting back to the idea of the conservatives, Republicans, whatever. And so on. Like, why should somebody get a tax break over their social status? Mm-hmm. A marriage is a social status, so there's things like that to me that don't make sense. And then tying it into let's just say the constitutional values and freedoms. A gay couple getting married, that doesn't hurt yourself. That doesn't affect your property. There are no harms done to you other than you find it offensive. You don't want your kids to see it for those that feel that way. But, like Christianity does not have the sole ownership of two people committing their lives together for, till death type of thing. And so things like that. And it really, those are things that I break with, let's just say, when it comes to your typical right. And I would challenge when people are out there going on about constitutionality and individual freedoms, and we hear a lot of that from the conservative side these days. Well, that stuff matters on what offends you. The only speech that needs to be protected is the speech you find offensive. Well, to me, that goes for everything else when it comes to those like natural law issues. Mm-hmm. Spend the rest of your life with somebody, or personal property. The government taking taxes, taking your personal property, and that should be judiciously handled and so on. But yeah, some of those kind of fundamental rights.
Yeah, Tony, what do you think about why marriage has a license behind it?
Well, I was going to actually go right to the audience because I'm sure they have something to say too.
Nothing's popped up there other than Safat said she agrees with you, Tim, and so does Edom. Yeah. So appreciate it, actually. Edom says he appreciates you, Tim.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I wish our politicians would have more of discussions of this kind of thing. When the law comes up, let's get into some of the fundamentals where the values are attached to these things, et cetera. Especially when you're talking these big things that impact people personally. Like a big one right now, the gun. Was it 411? I think
114.
114.
Uh-huh.
So
that's a big thing for me too.
Yeah, and a big piece of it is that's personal protection. I know I'm speaking by and large to the pro 2A crowd here, I'm sure. But what people never, or what, let's just say, doesn't get brought up, and it's similar, is early gun laws, restrictions were aimed at blacks. You can't have the guns. The NRA, it's amazing. I'll link it in and share it out on my Twitter if folks would get on. It's I think Tim OR or something.
Tim OR.
I believe Tim LeMaster OR or something like that. Okay. I'm not terribly good at getting some of that together, but
and we can pop it up on later.
Yeah, I do have a little Twitter and share it with you guys. But I think it was NPR type PBS people did a broadcast on this, that the NRA, as we know it today, the staunch fighting for your rights, actually came about because of the California Ronald Reagan push to cut guns from the Black Panthers who were walking the streets protecting their own from violent cops. Mm. It's a really good, stunning broadcast coming out from them. And what it was, so everybody says, the NRA was all for supporting. Well, they flipped after that. And this actually, it was from PBS people, which I love the sources coming from there because there's not a lot of refuting that. Mm-hmm. Guys in the South saw what was going on and said, we need to protect this because it won't just stop with them trying to take the guns from the Black Panthers in California. They're going to go further. And there was a revolution in the NRA to get politically involved. They were just shooting sports before that. So they wanted nothing to do with politics. And there was this basically coup in the NRA, and they became highly politically active. And that's, again, the conservative side. I actually joined the National African American Gun Association in 2018. If you don't know, look it up and join it. And because that's one of the things that infuriated me with the NRA. There have been, I think it was a case in Texas, a black gentleman with the cops. He had his concealed carry permit. I don't think they killed him. I don't think they shot him. But I know that they went after him and all this bad stuff. And it's pretty infuriating that the NRA didn't step up on that. Because to me, similar to the speech that needs protected, you need to look out for those that are most vulnerable and being shut down or protect their speech. Because if you do that, everybody else's speech is going to be protected. Well, guess what? The right to self-defense, go after those most vulnerable communities and advocate on their behalf. Mm-hmm. Right now, we got record crime in Portland. Mm-hmm. We got homicides. The cops will not be there for you. They're not even doing common patrol of the streets. And you want to take away the guns from the people that are most immersed in that violence.
Exactly. I mean, so let's talk real quick about 114 so people understand what that is. Okay, so the 114 is a measure that's coming out that will require, in order for you to get a license to buy a gun, you can't just go out and buy one and have a background check and be good. You have to get a license from a local law enforcement agency, which, by the way, as we talked about earlier, is understaffed.
Yeah.
And then once you get that, I think they were talking $65 to buy a license. Then you have the permission to go buy a gun. But you can't just go buy the license. You have to provide evidence that you've had a mental health check, And
Oh, I didn't know that part.
yeah, that was in there.
I mean, I know it's pretty bad,
You
but
have to have evidence you have had a mental health check, that your background's clear, that you've actually gone to a live fire in your hands training.
Yep.
And I have different feelings about the training. I think training's important because people carry guns and not trained on it with it. And as you know, if you're not trained on it with it, you can have it used against you. But that's it. I don't think it should be a stopper for you to buy a gun. I think it's definitely important for you to carry a gun, but that's a different story. And Tony, I definitely want you to speak a little more on the mental health piece here in a minute, the part of that law, because you had some good thoughts on that in the past. But yeah, so those are some of the things required. Plus, I think there was one more important piece on there. Oh, and they had a 10-round magazine limitation on there, which, by the way, being a Marine, but what's the difference between a 30-round magazine and 3 10-round magazines?
is there a punchline for this?
I was going to say about 3 to 5 seconds, right?
Okay, yeah, okay.
You're looking for the punchline.
The jar on the head needs to be tightened up a little
That's
bit.
the show next
Well, that
hour.
sounded like a setup for a bump.
That's the show next hour.
Yeah,
All right.
That's the next hour.
But yeah, so
Well, before we get to that, you know what? I think it's time to take a pizza break.
oh, pizza break.
So yes, you want to visit Hitch and Post Pizza, local Estacadian, I love that, Estacadian shop, pizza shop headed up by, oh my goodness, Valerie. She's amazing. You want to check it out. This place is for the whole family. Look at this. Go to education?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, we are back talking with Tim. Say your last name for me.
Tim LeMaster. With an R.
LeMaster.
A lot of people like to put an S on the end. I don't understand how that always happens, but it's just LeMaster.
Oh, I'm guilty of the same thing, actually, on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm used to it, but it's like, okay.
You know, we'll leave the mental health piece a little bit behind. We're talking with him, and why don't we go to education?
Yeah.
And that's something that's really good for you, close to your heart, I'm sure. So.
Well, I mean, I think it's important. It stunned me after being here a while to find out that Oregon has one of the worst rated education systems in the country. I mean, we fall into, like, depending on what you look at, U.S. News and those different things, mainstream stuff, we generally fall between 43, 47, somewhere in that range. And it floors me. Like, there we are, like, with Missouri and Mississippi, which, you know, the folks in these areas like to sneer their thumbs at. But yet they're sitting in it. And again, I'll look at 20 years Democrat domination and 4 years of unilateral control, 2 years before COVID kicked down. Folks like to put, COVID, lockdowns and such. But we got one of the worst education systems in the country. And one of the things for me, one of the things that, it's kind of the libertarian streak in me is I'm very much against centralized government, centralized authority. So, and that's, that's where we are with the school systems, federal, state, et cetera. So I'm very much against centralized authority, consolidation of power in one place like that. It makes it easy for lobbyists and such. On the education piece, the Oregon process here has failed. It's abhorrent, and it was reduced even more. They just signed off, or was it last year? I think it was. They signed off the bill to eliminate English and literacy and math standards. You don't know that one? They literally said no requirements for literacy and math to graduate. Gone. Part of the logic behind it, a little bit of the logic or excuse is because the COVID lockdowns with the schools and remote learning actually screwed up. It messed up the kids so bad with this online faux education. They weren't doing well, and so that's part of them making up on it. I came across this. This surprised me. I got to make sure. Yeah.
So what's the requirements? You got to be able to name all 527 genders or something? I mean, that's what they focus so much on.
Well, I mean, they put together a working group.
Major in texting.
I mean, there was
they're
doing the inclusiveness, which they actually put a working group together, to have the spectrum of, people and LGBT and et cetera. Like, that's where the energy and emphasis, they have a working group to try to make sure that goes well. Well, math, science, literacy, those are really way more fundamental to somebody achieving beyond that. We need to get things. So my idea, and it's not a new one. Arizona just actually went full state with it.
But Tim,
yes,
I don't
sir.
want to cut you off, but I heard what you just said loud and clear, but schools have been continually tried to be the one-stop shop
Exactly.
for everything.
It is.
That's a problem.
Well,
because,
other states are doing it well. Some states have amazing, stuff going on. Regardless of why, it should be the education piece, and it's tough because you do want to help kids. For me, I know what government cheese is. My mom had me when
the block.
My mom, yeah,
yes,
it's not Velveeta.
No, you had to cut off the ends because the ends were really hard.
Yeah, and you can't make a sandwich out of that. That just will not melt as a grilled cheese.
I think government cheese. You think that rates above or below the omelet inside of the MRE?
Oh, the MRE,
yeah. or we call armor padding.
Yeah,
you guys had government food too, though.
Oh yeah. So. Well, the chows are good. I enjoy the chows.
But Marines with the Navy all the time. They have better food.
So one of the things that's out there, and I think this is great, is if you don't know, it's the voucher system is what it's commonly referred to as. The money follows the child, etc.
Yep.
And I see a whole lot of positives in this. And I'll tell you what. And again, I'll go. I'll look at the Black community. There was a particular time, is about 48 to 72 hours, knocking on doors, talking to people, and a very conspicuous thing happened. Several of the elder Black men from the community I spoke with, and these are guys that have some position, whether it's in the government or, they've been around a long time. We're talking 60-plus-year-old guys, 50s, 60s, and such. And when the education come up is very conspicuous, several of them all of a sudden chimed in about trades and concern about education, etc.
Yes.
They're aware of the problems, and they're not happy with what's going on with the kids and so on.
Yeah.
And so one of my ideas is the voucher system. If you look at Arizona, they've gone further with it. And I understand D.C. has it for the inner cities because there's so many.
I grew up in
problems.
Washington, D.C.
Okay, and I didn't know this till a few weeks ago. Yep. So the idea is the money follows the kid. It's tied to state funding right now because the feds won't let it get loose. And it's probably in the neighborhood of around $5,000. A portion of that still stays with the state to take care of administration and so on. But essentially, the art of the possible, and that's what I like, this decentralization, innovation, open things up. So you got the first kind of layer everybody thinks of. You got your private schools, your charter schools, homeschool co-ops and things like that. You could actually take that money for your child and lump it together with other parents in your homeschool co-op. What could you do with that? Access things. Now let's take it a step further, because those are kind of things everybody comes to mind. Is what if? Well, why can't, let's say, the pipe fitters union has a mass of guys working out at Intel. Why couldn't they necessarily get together, and maybe Intel help support it, that they open up a schoolhouse near the job site and they could just bring their kids in. They all chip in their $5,000 per kid to pay for the teachers and some supplies, and maybe even the company, because that's a company perk.
All right.
And then you've got major industry. The union, if they teach math and stuff in their own classes, and they understand, and they know the reality of what it takes to live life, and that gets in there. Or a business organization on Alberta. You got all these folks that have kids on Alberta Street, and they come together as a group of their own, and we've got nonprofits up and down. Well, they open up one of their back rooms, 15 kids, and for the most part, that could actually handle, up until elementary school. You get into junior high, things shift, but again, you still got organizations that could come together, private businesses. It just blows it wide open as far as I'm concerned. And then the values. People always look at the conservative Christian values, like that's always the big thing that comes up with like voucher and co-ops. And I know Portland, a lot of people get concerned, the churches are going to get all the money, and they don't like that for their reasons or whatever. Well, we got piles of nonprofits. And even the values. I met a lady that she supports the public school notion and the concept, but the bullying, the drugs, and the failure of it and so on. But she also, she doesn't want her kid to have a lot of social media time. She doesn't want that, maybe technical computer time, but she's got her kids enrolled in a school that they don't do that. The only social media her kids get is sitting down with grandma watching YouTube. So she's got these values that are outside the normal box of what we typically think, and she loves what's going on, and they're pursuing it. Low technology, of course, you learn how to use a computer, but it's more about, other stuff.
Less screen time, more airtime.
Right. But the point being that she's got these values, and the parent has those values, and they can select a school that embodies that. So if your concern is your child's social awareness and growing up in the diversity field or whatever, then you work with the nonprofits. They open up, they connect, and you work with something that feeds into that.
So it sounds like you're kind of against a decentralized, controlled education system, almost like the education department needs to kind of go away or shrink to almost nothing. And stop controlling. Controlling the curriculum.
However, it would flush out in the long run because it would be self-fixing. But I think the public school system needs competition, and I see it also as a potential boon for teachers because the teachers get strung out. They got heavy class loads, all these students.
Yes.
Well, what if you become a teacher and you just contract out? And there you are. A whole different way of doing it. And you got parents that are vested in it. Parents get more engaged when they see it as their dollars. And they're actually putting their hands on it and such. And I think, in the public school, well, I mean, if you like your schools, and we've got schools out there in the public side in Oregon that do very well and people love it for their reasons, they may do perfectly fine, and there you go. But we've got absolute failures of schools, and parents are concerned for the safety, the bullying. I met an old lady, an elder Black lady, that in Portland, she was upset because her granddaughter was being bullied, and the school was angry at the daughter. Grandma's mad because she wants her kid to stand up for herself and did not like this kind of acceptance of bullying on part of the school. So grandma stepped in and she paid for private school for her granddaughter. And this is happening. I met so many people that move their kids out of the public schools for a whole host of reasons.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I've been a big proponent of vouchers. I think we've had the conversation on the show a couple times, right, Tony?
Mm-hmm.
About school vouchers, and education is a really big thing. And you'd probably do really well on Brandy's show because she constantly talks about education.
Oh, I'd love to have a sit down and even learn from it. I mean, and part of the thing, I think it scares people to an extent. But I've even had a teacher that she's like, it's worth considering. And a piece of it is this isn't like jumping with sweeping. I despise comprehensive anything. Because we're just not that smart. The politicians are not that smart to come in and do a comprehensive.
Exactly.
So you start. You start small. That's what Arizona did. They focused on the special education needs. They did this system. It worked well. I don't know how long they did it, but then they shifted it and made it available. There's no requirement. If you like your public school, you keep your public school.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big things, public school or not, is what we really need to get out of the curriculum is anything political or direct education.
Well, and again, that's where I point to. You know what? That's why you should have your choice.
Exactly. I'm saying
that's why you should have your choice. If you want this politics out and you just want to focus on the fundamentals of more traditional schooling with history and such, roll with it. If you're somebody that wants this political activism in your school, well, you get a voucher, you go to the political activism class by the local activism nonprofit, and you're golden.
Yeah, so I'm saying you go to something like that for it, but what I'm saying when it comes to public school, it should be the least basics. The basics are reading, writing, arithmetic, those type of basics. And the rest if you want something beyond that, you want something that's going to offer more than just those basics, then you go down to, like you said, you take your voucher and you go somewhere else. But the basics, if you're going to go to public school, and that's the one you want to go to, and you want to learn nothing but that, that's what it should be. Everything else on top of that, and the one-stop shop thing, I think needs to stop, honestly. But I think it needs to happen.
It's Little House in the Prairie. Look at we're in modern century. We know so much more about online. We know so much more about the human brain and learning and all this different stuff. And we've got the industrial version of Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah. Well, the one-stop shop where they're trying to deal with the socialism, the mental health. Help me fill in some other things you run into on this thing, Tony. The mental health and the socialism. I know that's a big thing.
Yep.
They're getting into the gender stuff. They just kind of go down.
And I hate to bring up this, but I'm going to bring it up at the last hour. CRT has been an issue.
And even with that, like my 2 cents to really speak to people on
I'm
that.
interested in that.
In more reality, it's actually just more about how much time in the day does a kid have and what matters to set them up for life. There's life skills a big one to me.
Life skills used to be a thing.
Well, and even too, even with active, we need. I believe in. I heard somebody speak about this a while back. Was even kids should learn philosophy from the aspect of critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily
how to think, not what to think.
Right. Yeah. How to think.
Teach
delve
how
into
to
that.
think.
Delve into that.
Yes.
Civics, really hardcore civics. If you want to go fight for your rights, well, understand the rights and the documents. I mean, the founding fathers, they freaking carved through all kinds of natural law and human law and from all over and really understand that and parse that out and then map it into whatever activism you're going to pursue. But that's like the core fundamental that ties us all together. And it's an amazing document. People don't realize we have the longest living constitution in history. because so many have flipped over and so on. So that just says something about the enduring factor of it and such.
And the big thing is, in the end, the Constitution really is just a document written on, it's words on paper. It's the concept and the idea and the people behind it that actually make that document a living document. And it's up to us to protect that.
Yeah, you gotta understand it first.
Exactly. Exactly. By taking
and again, that's where,
that.
and I'll put poke the conservatives in the eye. Things that don't fit your beliefs, people have the right to do things that don't fit your beliefs. And I get it from the left. I mean, because part of it, I was not your standard officer in the Marine Corps. I was a bit eccentric, and they got all the tight rules and such. Like, there's that piece I can relate to that these people believe things this way and they want you to behave that way, but that's not what the rules we have in this country are.
Yeah, I mean, and it's got to go both ways. But
yeah,
I'd love to talk about this more. But we've already bumped into a minute.
I know.
Time. It went quick, didn't it? So,
man.
Yeah, Tony, you want to close this out, man?
Yeah, I had one more question for you, but I'm going to say that for when you're on again. But it is such a pleasure to have you on. And this is Tim, everybody. Tim LeMaster. Did I get it?
Yes, sir, LeMaster.
Yes, and you're running for...
So I'm running for House District 43, which is inner Northeast Portland. Yep. Please take a look at my website, bringbackportland.com, and can always use, always got to do the dancing for dollars, as we said in the Marine Corps. But, if you like what you hear, please donate. That helps send the message. We're getting into crunch time now. It's just a couple weeks that really matter. Ballots come out in about about 3 weeks or so.
Yes,
definitely.
Yes.
So.
Are you watching the gubernatorial race?
Oh yeah, that debate last night was really good. It's really interesting.
Right.
I mean, I like having the third party in there, but it's scary at the same time.
We put a survey recently. We've had quite a few responses to it. Last I checked, it was 75% roughly towards Christine Drazen. I think we had I want to say it was 12% or something like that towards Tina, and then there was another 12% towards our mascot. And then Betsy was down there in the 7%, I think. That's when I looked, roughly in that area.
But remember, too, you've got a undoubtedly strong conservative crowd, and that's...
Yeah, I posted it. I posted it on non-conservative sites.
Oh, it does kind of surprise me Betsy's so low in that, because, a lot of the more libertarian-minded folks...
Yeah. When I posted it in sites that were also not as Republican, just to kind of get some good balance on
that's
there.
Great. That's so glad to hear that. I mean, we need more of that. You listen to other folks that do these and, goes to their core raw, red meat crowd, and
exactly.
We don't know what the reality is a lot of times, because everything's just so biased and we're all getting funneled into these stovepipes.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Well, thanks you guys so much for joining us. We have a show right after here called Ranger Games. And we have some good stuff to talk about there. We talk about a hero that's still missing in action even today after from the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Vietnam. What was it, Vietnam? No. The Korean War. Good golly. Anyways, thank you so much, guys. We'll see you guys next time, 7 p.m. And don't forget to watch the show tomorrow's 7 p.m. for Campfire Discussions. Have a good night.